In 9.2, we're going to use another method for solving quadratics. So far, we solved quadratics by factoring. Now we're going to solve using square root. Okay, so before we solve using square root, I'm just going to look at this first equation. It says x squared equals 25. If you were to guess the answer for this equation, you could probably guess that x is equal to 5, because 5 to the second power is 25. But this is quadratic, so there's typically two answers, so there is another answer to this question. The other answer to this question is x equals -5. And the reason it's -5 is if I do -5 to the second power, -5 times -5 is also 25. So there are two answers to this. So I know the answers. The question is, how did I get those answers? So if I go back to the beginning, when I have an x to the second power, the opposite of squaring something is square rooting something. So to cancel the squared, I can square root the left side. If I square root the left side, I need to square root the right side. Okay, now the square root of 25 is 5, so that tells me how I got this answer. But if something is being squared, it turns positive no matter whether it's positive or negative. So even though 5 is the answer that's very obvious, it's also true that -5 to the second power is 25. So I added this second answer because I know there should be two answers, because quadratics have two answers. So let's look at B. I see m to the second equals 49/4. I want to get the m by itself, so to cancel the squares, I will square root the left side. If I square root the left side, I need to also square root the right side, which tells me that m is, the square root of 49/9 is 7/3. So that's one of my answers, but because I know if I square a negative, I also get the same answer, I need to give a second answer. And that's because if it was squared to begin with, I'm going to get two answers. So my answers are m is positive 7/3 and m is negative 7/3. Now I'm going to tell you another way to write your answer. Sometimes if you have two answers that are positive and negative, there's a lazier way to write it. I could say m is, and then say, instead of saying positive 7/3 and negative 7/3, I say positive negative 7/3. And that means this is positive 7/3 and this is negative 7/3. So if I go back to the first problem, I could have also written my answer as x equals positive -5, and that includes positive 5 and -5. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and try the next one. Since it's p to the second power, I will square root both sides. Okay, the square root of 0 is 0. Normally we also have a negative answer, but there's no such thing as -0. So I only get one answer here. P is 0. Okay, let me try the next ones. Okay, n to the second is 5, so I'm going to square root both sides. The square root of 5, I don't know the square root of 5, it's irrational. So I'm going to get n is the square root of 5. Because this was n to the second, I could also get n is negative square root 5. So I get two answers, positive square root 5 and negative square root 5. Make sure the negative's on the outside. And you also can write this as n is positive and negative square root 5, if you would prefer to write it that way. Let's keep going. Square root. I get r is the square root of 20 is irrational, but actually I can simplify the square root of 20 because it's 4 times 5, which is 2 square root 5. So my answers are positive 2 square root 5 and negative 2 square root 5. Or if you would like to write it the lazy way, I can say r is positive and negative 2 square root 5. Don't write it both ways, but you can do it either way. Okay, last one's a bit of a trick, but we're still going to do it. Let's square root it. Okay, now if I square root -4, is it 2? Well, if I do 2 to the second power, I get positive 4. So that's not the answer. Now if I do -2 to the second power, -2 times negative, that's also positive 4. There is no possible way to get -4 by squaring something. So this one has no solution. You cannot square root a negative answer, because when you multiply something by itself, it always turns positive. So if the radicand is negative, the answer is no solution. Okay, go ahead and do the practice problems in this section. Pause, check your answers, and then we're going to go to example 2. Okay, here are the solutions to the practice answers. Although they're also at the bottom, I chose to write n equals ±6 instead of listing it out as two separate answers, but you can do it either way. If you want to look at it, pause it, but I'm going to move to the next example. Okay, now I'm going to still solve these using square root. I'm going to leave my answers simplified, but instead of it being x squared, it's x minus 1 squared. I still need to cancel the squared first. I cannot add 1 because it's part of being squared, so I'm going to do square root on both sides. Now, that canceled out the squared, but I still have the x minus 1. And then when we square root the 25, we normally get 5, but because it was squared, we also get a negative 5. So we get a positive and negative 5, which I'm going to rewrite as x minus 1 could equal positive 5 and x minus 1 equals negative 5. And then I'm going to solve both of these equations to get my two x values. So one of my answers is 6. My other answer is negative 4. So I still got two answers, they just don't have that positive negative pattern. If I were to check, if I plug 6 in, 6 minus 1 is 5, and then when I square it, I get 25. If I plug in negative 4 minus 1 is negative 5, and then when I square it, it goes to positive 25. Okay, I'm going to do the same steps for B. Okay, it has a squared, so let me square root it. That canceled out the squared, but I still have x plus 7 equals, square root of 4 is 2, but because it was squared, I get positive and negative 2. Okay, I'm going to split it into 2. And then I'm going to solve it both ways. It's x plus 7 could equal positive 2, or x plus 7 could equal negative 2. If it's plus 7, I will minus the 7. And I get x equals negative 5 for one of my answers. Minus 7, I get x equals negative 9 for my second answer. Okay, let me try a couple more of those. Let's see, C, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just trying to give you some different types. Okay, canceled the squared. I have 3x minus 5 equals 4, but it could also equal negative 4. So I could split it up right away, or I can write it out individually. They both work. Okay, plus 5, 3x is 9. Okay, I got x is 3 for one of my answers. Okay, let me do the other one now. Plus 5. So I got x is 1/3 for my other answer. So I still got two answers because it was quadratic. They just look a little different. Okay, now let's look at the next one. We're going to see what happens when we cannot square root it. It's irrational. Okay, but my step is the same. I want to cancel the squared. So let's go with that. X plus 5 equals the square root of 11. I have no idea what the square root of 11 is. So it's irrational. So I'm going to leave it as plus or minus square root 11. Okay, now I'm going to split it up and say that x plus 5 could equal positive square root 11, and x plus 5 could equal negative square root 11. And I'm going to solve it both ways, and then I'll show you how you could do it without splitting it up. Okay, now when I minus 5, the problem is I can't actually do square root 11 minus 5 because they're not like terms. So normally we put the rational part first. So I'm going to put the negative 5 first, and then positive square root 11 second. And that's one of my answers, and that's the best I can do with that because they are not like terms. Just like when we were adding radicals, you cannot combine them. So normally we put the rational part first. So negative 5, and I'll put minus square root 11. The other way is also correct, it's just more commonly written this way. So those are my two answers. Now, some people like to solve it from this step up here, and you're welcome to do that as well. So if I were doing that, I would have x plus 5 equals positive negative root 11. And I'm like, oh, it's irrational anyways. So I'm just going to solve it from here. So I'll minus the 5. Then when I write my answer, this cancels. I put the negative 5 first. And then I put plus minus square root 11. Okay, now this is one way to write my answer, and it means the same thing as these answers. Because one is negative 5 plus root 11, which is this one. The other one is negative 5 minus root 11, which is this one. Okay, let's do two more. Okay, same steps though, just adding some simplification. Okay, x minus 4 equals plus or minus the square root of 99 is irrational because I don't know what it is. However, if you look at it, it feels like it can simplify because if I do 9 times 11, I get 99, and the square root of 9 is 3. So I'm going to simplify it and leave it like that. Okay, now I see it's irrational, so I'm gonna go ahead and solve it from where it is. You can split it up or you can solve it from here. I'm gonna do it from here, 'cause it's a little less writing. Okay, now you normally put the rational part first, which is the 4. It's a positive 4. Okay, and then this is plus minus 3 square root 11. And then that's my answer. I cannot add these together because one has a root 11 and the other does not. And if you split it up, you would have 4 plus 3 squared 11 as one of your answers and 4 minus 3 squared 11 as your other. Okay, let's do one more example. Square root x plus 4 equals positive negative the square root of 28 is irrational. Does it simplify? It does simplify because it's 4 times 7. So I'm going to make it 2 square root 7. Then I'm going to go ahead and solve it. I'm going to subtract 4. And I get x equals, I'm going to put the rational part first. You don't have to, it's just how it's typically written. Positive negative 2 root 7. And that's the best answer I can get. Or you can split them up. It could be negative 4 plus 2 root 7 and negative 4 minus 2 root 7. Okay, go ahead and do the practice problems. The answers are at the bottom, or you can check the calendar for the solutions.